Our first presenter is Mike Sutter. He's a local restaurant critic here in San Antonio. And Mike Sutter has served as the restaurant critic for the San Antonio Express News since 2016. He's appeared on NPR's All Things Considered, ABC's To Tell the Truth, and written for the Austin-American-Statesman, The Guardian, Bon Appetit, and the Wall Street Journal. So please welcome the man who has my dream job, Mike.
Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. And I wanted to say to the restaurant people here today, thank you for putting up with me. Maybe I could tell you how cool it is to get paid to eat for a living, or I could talk about my 25 favorite food songs of all time. But tonight I thought I should talk about somebody else, about the people that we interact with every day at restaurants, the waiters, the people who rely on us to help pay their salaries with our tips, and the shared responsibilities that we all bear as a tipping culture. In 1982, Douglas Adams published Life, the Universe, and Everything, a sequel to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a great book, science fiction through a magic 8-ball. He devised a spaceship powered by robots, figuring out how to split the check at an Italian restaurant. Welcome to Bistro Mathics. We've all been there, figuring out who owes what, how they're going to pay it, and how much they should tip the wait staff. And that's it right there, really. The whole animating principle, the dynamics of tipping, whether to tip, how much to tip, and how much do you feel like playing God today? Tipping's not an altruistic act. It never was. Tipping is about how it makes us feel as much as it is about how it makes them feel. We tip more, we feel generous, philanthropic, parental. We tip less, we feel powerful, corrective, and also weirdly parental. So we tip everywhere. We eat and drink. We tip at coffee shops, at cafes, at bars, even at fast food drive-thrus. Here's $1, a $5, 30% of the check. Given with a good heart, they aren't just tips. They're thank you notes. Tipping's always been an American power play, though. It's the freedom to grant and withhold rewards based on our own private checklist. Water level? Check. Smile? Check. The ability to read our minds and make sure our kids have crayons? Check and check. But is that really how waiters or anybody else should be getting paid? We ask some of the lowest paid, most overworked, most job insecure, most invisible people in the workforce to take on the role of daycare worker, clairvoyant, traffic cop, nutritionist, and psychologist. And for this, we pay them $2.13 an hour. Our system is broken. Their tips make up the gap between $2.13 and the $7.25 minimum wage and beyond. But not everything counts as a tip. Mandatory service charges aren't required by law to go to the employee. It's up to the restaurant whether the waiter gets a piece of that. At the sugar factory on the Riverwalk that you see here, the 20% mandatory service charge says, and I quote, "The restaurant retains 5% to cover expenses and distributes the remaining 15% to the service staff." And here I thought the $39 cocktails were there to cover expenses. We're back to robots doing math. Our system is broken. Now, James Beard-nominated chef Chris Cullum, who is here tonight, tried to bend the tipping formula when he opened his brunch restaurant, Cullum's Attaboy, in 2022. It's a block from the St. Mary's Strip, just around the corner from his chicken and beer joint, Cullum's Attagirl. So with tip levels around 11% at Attagirl, Cullum told me he wanted to offer the staff some security. So when Attaboy opened, he adopted an automatic 20% gratuity at both places. For every bottle of champagne, every order of wings, every plate of eggs and truffles. That grand experiment lasted all of 4 months. And this is Chris. Cullum told me, he said, this isn't doing what I thought it would, and the customers were complaining. Now, on top of that, he said less motivated staffers became even less motivated, and they're gone now, and so is that service charge. Since then, Cullum told me voluntary tips have risen to 22%. Now, on a customer level, tipping still comes down to one thing, the most important thing, and that's service. When I hit the Louisiana food truck called Sauce's Southern Kitchen, a customer named Mike Hollinger came back for his second order of the afternoon. Now, he's a regular at Keon Noel's window, where a tip jar shares space with a flip screen card reader. Mike told me he knows my name and he knows what I want. I walk up and he just says, I got you. I appreciate that type of service. And still, our system is broken. How do we fix it? Ask yourself about your own tip policy. Is it 20% across the board? $1 a box for takeout? 10% for counter service? Is it your time to cosplay as the benevolent God or the vengeful God? As a restaurant critic and a customer, I start at 20%. For no other reason than it's easy to double the first two numbers of the check for the tip. That way, $18 becomes $360, $110 becomes $22, and Jan, $300 becomes a problem for next month's expense report. I asked my friends on Facebook what they tip. By the way, these are receipts from 1 month of doing my job. Never less than 20% ever came the clearest answer. 7 to 10% for takeout, maybe just 10% if service is bad. And they said, as a reminder that 22% isn't an automatic right, the system is broken. How broken? Broken enough that both sides of a presidential election surrounded by broken things are trying to gain traction with the idea of no taxes on tips. That's a start, maybe. A recognition at least. But is it a fix? No, it's a Band-Aid on a bleeding system. The real solution? Let's try raising restaurant prices and try paying a steady hourly wage. The way we handle most service industry jobs. Europe has done it for centuries. A realistic wage, a competitive wage. Naive? Absolutely. Especially in a city where we believe $5.99 enchilada plates are our God-given rights. But it's worth a shot, otherwise we're stuck with Mr. Pink here from Reservoir Dogs. I don't tip because society says I have to. As far as I'm concerned, they're just doing their job. Tell that to the pros. Tell it to Jeffrey Spahn at the new Dean's Steakhouse. Tell it to James Goodman at Isidore at Pullman Market. Tell it to Flora Ailman, who's training the next generation of waiters as we speak, and tell it to Russell Crawford at the Friendly Spot. Until we fix it, tip like your lifestyle depends on it. In 9 years of restaurant work wearing this shirt, I got tipped once, $1 in the drive-thru. It was a thank you note for the tired kid on Graveyard in a polyester shirt. Do it for the people who need it. Do it for the people who appreciate it. Do it for the people who remember it. The system is broken. And can we get 12 separate checks over here, please? Thank you. By the way, they didn't tell me that I would be matching the curtains tonight.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I think we can all agree that's such an interesting topic, especially coming from someone in your career field. I wanted to ask you, what would you like for the audience to take away from this discussion today? Because we talked about a lot of things, being a good tipper, but also maybe getting rid of tips. But what would you say to everyone out there?
Well, I think Getting rid of tips is a more systemic problem. So we have to live under the stars that are above us right now. And I think that that means taking care of the invisible people in our workforce. That slide with the waiter going through that's just a blur, I think a lot of us, me included from time to time, don't see anything more than that blur. And I think we need to know the stories, we talked about storytelling, the stories that are attached to the people behind that blur, because it's activity, because it's work, because it's something they do to help us. And they do it at our mercy.
That's so true. That's amazing. That's amazing. I also wanted to ask you, what if someone only could have one meal in San Antonio, where would you suggest it is?
Oh, you think I wouldn't be ready to answer this one? It's Garcia's Mexican Food on Fredericksburg Road. It's the number 5 enchilada plate, rice and beans, fresh flour tortillas.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much.